Hello. Y yo nos vemos una a la otra así de, tú empieza, no, tú empieza. Es como comunicación con la mirada, sin decir palabras, y sé lo que me está diciendo, vas, me está diciendo, tienes que hacerlo. Por cierto que me di cuenta, ayer estaba viendo nuestros videos y me di cuenta que siempre traigo el mismo suéter gris, y hoy lo traía puesto y dije, no, voy y me lo cambio.
No me había dado cuenta de eso, pero sí me di cuenta de nuestra conversación entre
Así de...
miradas.
Pero bueno, hola, ¿cómo están? Bienvenidos a otro episodio de Querían que esté dormido. Em, Hoy es un episodio especial, muy especial por muchas razones. Primero, es un episodio English Speak English o Spanglish.
Spanglish.
Em, y tenemos invitado muy especial porque es mi sobrino. Y él es mitad mexicano, mitad americano. Y su papá es mi primo, hermano, así que es como tú, bueno, un poco como tú con
Ok,
tu
tío.
tío, que era más
Tío, primo.
primo. Exacto, yo en este caso la tía que es más prima porque Joey es
Claro,
casi de mi edad.
claro.
Entonces, a partir de ahora vamos a hablar en inglés.
Ok.
A partir de 1, 2, 3. Tú empieza.
Okay, well, we'll give you the nice welcoming to Joey. Hi, how are you?
Good. It's very early here, but I wake up early anyway, so feeling good.
That's
I
good.
feel
So,
I feel like our family, I don't know, maybe Joey will say it's different, but it's early birds. We're early birds, aren't we, Joey? De Miramontes, Gonzalez,
Well,
yeah.
when you come from the farm, you have to wake up early, or otherwise you don't get a pajareta.
The pajareta, exactly. People won't know, maybe people won't know what pajaretas
I
are. Do
don't
you know,
know.
Vianney? You don't
No.
know. Pajaretas are basically, we lost Joey for a bit, but I'll tell you. It is the milk, like the I can't speak in English. I'm used to Spanish now. I know I'm forgetting all the words. So fresh milk,
Fresh
and
milk.
then you put sugar,
Okay.
cocoa, or coffee, or cocoa and tequila. So those are the pajaretas. So
Coco?
chocolate.
Ah, okay, okay. Like,
I don't know
okay.
why I say
Got
cocoa.
it.
I think
You
people
said
say here
coco.
cocoa instead of chocolate. I don't know why.
Yeah, got it.
Uh, that's the name of the powder without the
Yeah,
sugar and
Yeah.
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 that's it. Yeah, so it is. We lost you for a little bit, Joey. That's why I was explaining, but yeah, so early birds. So thank you. Plus we made Joey wait for like loads of time because we had technical issues, but he waited for us as because he's lovely. And yeah, you have something to say?
Well, I wanted to make sure that you tell us where you're calling from. So where are you located?
I'm in a small town, not a small town, small city called Korea near Nagoya, Japan. So like right in the middle of
Nagoya.
Japan.
Lovely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
And just to say a little bit of, so as I say, Joey is Mexican American, and he is from Texas. I'm just gonna introduce you, Joey, like, instead of letting him say, but just very quickly, he's from Texas, but and I'm saying this because he's more Mexican than many Mexicans, like in terms of like he knows so much stuff about Mexico, and he lived in Mexico for a bit, and he'll tell us a little bit of that. And also, I mean, he is in Tokyo at the moment, but he lived in Morocco, and I have so many questions. He's already told me a few things, but I think it's like, I don't know, he had really
okay.
wild experiences. He's gonna tell us.
So
Hopefully.
first, I want to know. Okay, so you were born in Texas. Is your mom or your dad Mexican?
My dad.
Your dad is Mexican.
Mhm.
Okay, and then all your life you live in Texas, or how often would you go to Mexico, or like when or your dad spoke to you in Spanish, or what brought this Mexican side of you flourish, or I don't know, tell me.
So actually, I was born in California.
Okay.
Yeah,
My
sorry.
parents, it's okay. It's complicated. So, uh, my parents got divorced when I was 5. My mom moved to Texas, so I grew up there, but
Okay.
actually lived more time in California with my dad. I didn't grow up speaking Spanish. I never went to Mexico until I was like 20 or something like that. My dad did everything he could to make me as white as possible. Like, he really wanted me to blend in because he experienced a lot of discrimination when he first came to
Right.
the US. He didn't speak English, he had an accent. There's just like whenever you go to a new country, and I've experienced this all over the world, there is like a hazing process until you like assimilate into the culture. And he wanted me to, have success. And to be honest, I'm kind of glad because he's not the best teacher, right? He's not very good at teaching. So if he had tried to teach me both English and Spanish, I probably would be terrible at both instead of being able to speak, at least English well. And so my first trip to Mexico was in like 2008, something like that. And it was so crazy for me because I had only known America at that point. And
Yeah.
I just imagine like the rest of the world lives exactly the same, but maybe it's in a different language. I didn't realize that there were so many differences like in how people think and how people act, and like going there, seeing where he came from, because I had always grown up hearing stories of like the Florencia and the ranch and all this stuff, and to actually see where he came from, which is like a house made out of rocks in the middle of the mountains, it was like wild for me. Like I grew up, in a pretty modern type lifestyle, but he literally comes from a cave. Like the place is called Las Cuevas. He literally like would sleep in caves and stuff. Not all the time, but like it's it's such a huge leap for him to have gone from like being a farmer to now moving to the US and having to deal with all of like modern society, and it's
Right.
very fast paced and complicated, and he just never really could give me like that guidance of like how to succeed in this type of world because he didn't grow up like that. And he's
Right.
actually in his life done a lot to like isolate himself from society because he doesn't want to like kind of take the time to understand how complex it is. He's a simple farmer in his heart. Like that's how he grew up. And so like those values were instilled in me. And so I grew up kind of like, you need to be honest. You need to be a man of your word. You need to work hard. You need to wake up early. And that's not like a common thing in America. American people are kind of lazy because they have everything, right? And so I don't know if that answers your question or not. I'm sorry.
It
No,
does.
yeah.
And it just brings so many questions, and it's so true. Like sometimes we don't even realize. I mean, I don't know how often it happens to children whose parents are immigrants that, as you said, like the parents move to a new country and they hide that side or like their history just to blend in, and so their children don't face those difficulties that they face when they first move into the country. Yeah, sorry, I don't know where I was going with that, but it's just very interesting to
It's
hear.
so interesting.
Yeah.
And like, and what I was saying earlier, like Joey's more Mexican than more Mexican. I was maybe talking about myself because he actually went to, so where our family is from is a town called Florencia in Zacatecas. And I never lived there. Like I've been there visiting, I can stay, a few days at the ranch. But Joey actually lived there. And like I always say, it's so different to visit a place than living in there. And
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you, Joey, just I think you've told me before, but just so it's here and people can hear it. What was that like for you coming from living in the US in a city to move into a town like Florencia? I don't know how long were you there, but you were there for at least a few months, weren't you?
Yeah, and then I went back for a summer with just me and my grandma. I really like once I learned Spanish, I wanted to know her because I grew up my whole life without being able to talk to her.
Mhm.
The first time it was like an adventure. Like everything is new and exciting. The town is very small, and up until like recently, didn't have good internet, didn't have, the roads weren't all paved. It's just like a very small, close-knit, conservative farming community where everybody knows everybody, everybody gossips about everybody. All of all of my cousins, they call it, what do they call it?
Pueblo chico, tierra
Florencia
grande. Ah. Sorry, you go.
Florencia venenosa. They call it Florencia venenosa. Like,
Ah.
and the
Oh my god.
Because of the gossip or what?
It's terrible. It's people
Oh,
there have
interesting.
nothing to. There's such a bad vibe between beef between people. Like it's trauma. Bad.
like many people there don't have like hobbies or so because it's so boring is the thing. There's absolutely nothing to do. But for me, like that can be a good thing in small doses. Like uh when I went back the second time, I spent the summer after I finished my bachelor's degree because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So I wanted to just unplug, escape. And that's like the perfect place to do that. Like if you're really stressed out, go to Florencia. Like there's nothing to distract you.
Maybe that's where I need to go, Pili.
Yeah, I'll take you to the ranch. It's so peaceful.
Pili hasn't taken me to the ranch, so I've never been.
You will come. I promise.
So yeah,
This is a promise I'm making to everyone. I will take you to the ranch.
yes, because I've heard the stories and Pili has taken friends and all that, but I have never had the pleasure of being just there.
Honestly,
We'll go.
the nature is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Like the mountains and the valleys. If you go during the summer when everything's green and it rains and the thunder is so loud it shakes the windows, like, it's amazing.
And the sky,
Yeah.
like you can literally see the Milky Way. I'm not joking. You can see it from there because there's no light. Like the ranch is not next to the town, so the lights from the town aren't that strong because it's small.
Right.
But in the ranch, when my dad turns off the big lamps, I don't know what to call them, this kind of street lamps kind of style.
Yeah.
And it's usually clear skies because it only rains in rainy season in Mexico. You can actually see. It's crazy. The
Wow.
white, like it's not like probably there. If you go to the desert, like maybe Joey did in Morocco, I don't know. It's probably even brighter. Like here, it's not like that, but you can like
See it. Yeah. Joey, so how long were you there for the first time you went?
I want to say like 4 or 5 months, something like that. That was the result of the 2008 economy collapse. Like where
Right.
everything. My dad lost his job around that time, and we were like just getting by for a few years, but then we like ran out of money. So we went to go live with my grandma, and she had taken like her husband died when my dad was 7, my grandpa, and she had taken this little house that was just one room, and over the course of her life just kept adding to it, to when we got there it was like I think there's like 5 or 6 bedrooms, every bedroom has a bathroom. Her vision was to create this like place where people can go and no matter what we have a home. And that actually was the case for us. Is like we hit like rock bottom. We went there. I remember the first thing she made us was mole. I'd never had mole in my life before. And I was like, what is this? Like, and it was like going from a really bad situation of like worrying about the future and what am I going to do. But then when you're in Florencia, you realize you don't need a lot. You have food, you have a place to live, you have your family. Like, it's going to be okay. And that experience has really helped me because my life hasn't really like gotten easier since then, right? But it's always good to know in the back of my mind, like, no matter what, like if I fail in my career, right? If something happens and I can't find a job, I can always go back to Florencia and I can do anything. I can sell tacos, I can teach people English, like the ability to survive. I'm not going to say thrive, make like a nice living, but to survive is so much easier than in many other parts of the world where you depend on like a big company to hire you. So it has become like a sort of a last plan, a final refuge, you know, like if World War III happens and America
Yeah.
is getting
Same.
bombed with nuclear bombs, like I'm gonna go to Florencia.
I always say that, Joey. I'm so happy you bring this up because both things. I always say if I fail, if nothing worked, I've told Barry, I was like, if we don't make it, we'll just go to the ranch. There's water, there's food, we can grow lots of stuff, we'll survive. And if we go when my dad's still alive, he'll teach us how to grow food and how to have, cows and cattle and all that. And then I also think if, shit hits the fan with the war, I'm just going to Florencia. Like it's so far away and up in the mountain. I'm like, yeah, bring it on. They won't find us. So yeah, it's so nice to have that. I feel I don't know. Like I sometimes I wonder. I've always had that. Like the ranch is there. I can go there. It's like this base if everything
Right.
fails. So I feel very privileged.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice.
Yeah.
I don't think I can say I have a place like that I can be like,
You can come with me.
okay,
I'll
I'll
take
just
you.
come to Pilar. But yeah,
Um,
but I see what you're saying, Joy, about like, I guess it's nice to have that place to go and just live with the basics, go back to the basics without having to
it's like grounding, it's like that's the
yeah,
word.
a
It's like
grounding
saying,
place. Yeah.
because when you're here and you have possibilities of getting these jobs or getting things, a car, a house, and this is kind of floating things, and then it's kind of fragile because those things, economy just fails and it just drags you with it, like everything sinks. But if you go back to basics and think of it, it's like like Joy said, if you have a place to live, you have food and you have your family. That's all you need. And then if you think like that, then you're more calm, I guess. Like it gives some sort of certainty of you'll survive, like Joey said. So I think that's really cool.
Nice. Okay, so and then were you able to learn Spanish fluently?
A little bit. I mean, I don't use it at all, so I'm very rusty, but I took my first Spanish classes there. Actually, when I moved to Guadalajara, I lived with Pili for a little bit. And then I remember there was a maid that lived there. What was her name? Julie? Was it
Yeah,
Julie?
Julie. Yeah, Julie.
She didn't speak any English, and she actually, like, I probably learned most of my Spanish, at least the basics, from talking to her, because just trying to communicate, like, this was really before Google Translate was good at all, like,
Yeah.
so I had to like talk like a baby, use gestures, like, and I was forced to learn Spanish. Like, I'm really glad that I did because that kind of opened a whole world to me. I'm not going to say like I'm great at it, but I definitely can like live in Mexico on my own and be fine.
Yeah.
And it really kind of showed me like, okay, if this is one world that has opened to me because of a language, it got me interested in other languages, like at that
Yeah.
time, Monse moved to Germany, and I was like, oh wow, let me learn German, go see what that's like. And where I live in California, they don't have German classes because it's just not there's not a big demand for it.
Mm-hmm.
But they opened like Arabic classes because there's a lot of Arabs there. So I started learning Arabic, and it's like, whoa, 5,000 words in Spanish come from Arabic. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, that's really interesting. And I'm like, I started to notice all of these like cultural similarities between like Mexican people and Arab people. And I really gravitated towards that because it was like familiar but new. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
there was things that I could relate to, but it was still interesting. Like their food was different, but their disposition is very similar. They're like warm and friendly. And this is like the aspect of being Mexican that I really like is like being open to people, like inviting them to your home, cooking for them. I do this with all of my American friends and they appreciate it, but they don't understand it. They're like, why are you cooking for us? Like, why don't you just order a pizza? And I'm like, because it's
It's
from
not,
me, like,
yeah.
like, and so that eventually, like years later, like studying Arabic, learning about the Arab world, like when I got the opportunity to go to Morocco, I was like, yes, let's do this because I had always wanted to live in like an Arab country, and this was like my chance to do that.
Wow. Before you move into your life in Morocco, there's two things I want to say. It's so true about like how people don't understand things about your culture. Like I remember when, because I moved to Canada when I was 15. And during high school and all that, we used to do parties for each other of like it's her birthday and you do like this whole celebration. You like you do surprise them with decorations or whatever. And I remember trying to do that here, and it was like, why are you doing that? Like, why? It's not. I'm like, because that's the right thing to do. Why not? Like, I want to show my love and appreciation for this person. And then it just seemed like something so, it just didn't make sense to them. And I had to stop that side. Yeah, like I have to stop being that person just because
Yeah.
nobody else got it and it didn't came across as something good to them. It just triggered that, like when you were mentioning, like it just triggered that memory of like feeling so out of place trying to be myself and then just being seen as like you're crazy, I don't understand what you're doing and it doesn't make sense. um and the second question that the second comment or question that I had is like, so you said you grew up just trying to be as white as American as possible, and then when you moved to Mexico and you pretty much discover a new side of you. Like, how did that affect you? How I don't even know what the question will be. Like it.
So I
Yeah,
think I know what you're getting at is like I grew up kind of not knowing a big part of my identity,
exactly.
and then now I get to discover that. So my last name is Correa. I grew up as Joey Correa. Like that's how my dad told me to say my last name. That's how I told everyone. Um, it made it a lot easier when, during like attendance in class, right? So um, my dad told me we were Italian for a long time. And I asked my
Wow.
mom, I'm like, yeah, mom, I'm Italian. She's like, no, you're not. And I'm like, what? And so I think he is in some way embarrassed because of how Mexicans were and probably still are treated in America today. Like, uh, before I get into, discovering my identity, like in America, there's these huge strides towards ending racism, like the Black Lives Matter movement. That doesn't really extend to Mexican people. Like, it's still socially acceptable to be racist towards Mexican people in subtle ways. And it's very strange to me that in this day and age, we talk about like injustice and everything, like the way Mexican people are treated in the US, mostly by Mexican Americans, like they are the worst towards Mexicans, right? Is like very unfair. But going to Mexico, like I got to see my family, not just like my immediate family. That's where I met Pili and Monse, and their brother Luis. I started to see like, oh, that's why I'm this way. I look very similar to my grandfather who died when my dad was 7. I would go visit his brothers and sisters who at that time were like in their 70s and 80s, and they would just be like shocked. They would be like, "Oh my God, you look so much like him." Like for them, it was like seeing their dead brother again. And so
Wow.
it was like, in a way, I had always had these sort of like, I mentioned earlier, these like small town farmer values. And I got to see like where that came from. I got to see like, okay, my life has always been confusing. I've had to figure out everything on my own. And I was always like resentful towards my dad because he never could really give me good advice. But then I saw the world he came from and I started to be more understanding like, oh, he's preparing me for a world, a life that's beyond society. Um, in one thing that I learned is like being Mexican, you view life and death differently than most cultures.
Mm-hmm.
I when I was in Mexico, there was this family friend. I don't know how his name's Malesio, and he's just I don't know he might be related. I'm not sure exactly, but he grew up always being involved with the family. He helped build my grandma's house. He was kind of like a big brother to my uncles. I really, really love this guy because he was so honest, right? He was rude and an asshole, and like a lot of people didn't like him, but he would tell you exactly what he was thinking. And I just really respected that because like I didn't have to guess what his motives were or anything like that. I wanted to go see him because he lives in Guadalajara and we lived, 2 hours up in the mountain. And my dad would always be like, later, we'll go later. He ended up dying like just within a week. And that kind of showed me like how quickly things can change. When I went with my uncle Chabo, Pili knows Chabo, to go see him, to go see his, his grave, uh, my uncle Chabo referred to it as his new house. He told me, he's like, hey, let's go see Mele's new house. And I'm like, did he die? Like, I was like, for a moment, like, okay, so he just moved. Maybe I misunderstood. But we went to his grave, and it wasn't like a sad thing. So like in American culture, going to visit someone's grave, you would bring flowers, you would cry. I think in this does happen in Mexican culture. I'm not saying funerals are happy, but the view on life is that it is temporary, that you're going to die. My dad tells me all the time, like when you die, you die. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
So I've always been much more comfortable talking about death, um, realizing that life is short. That's why you need to celebrate. That's why you need to make the most out of the time you have with people because they might not be there. Whereas in other cultures where there's more stability, there's more routine, they kind of take time and people for granted. They really believe that they're going to live forever, that they're going to have all of these chances to see their loved ones. So they don't really make that extra effort to like enjoy that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a conversation that we have. Like, yeah, it's just, I mean, the fact that we still celebrate like Dia de los Muertos and all that, it just brings the
Yeah.
conversation, right? Like it's something that is around. Like we know we are all going to die, and it's part of our lives, and then it's just like I
And
don't know.
remember the death and like having that connection, like
Mhm.
Theo Chao said, we're gonna go to see his new house. Like it's speaking about him, like he exists in a different form and a different life, but like not, yeah, like we not like he's gone completely. Like we have that connection, and it's interesting because I feel like every person we've, if not every person, most people we've interviewed, the tradition that they keep, what's the word?
Celebrating
Is
yeah.
Day of the Dead, isn't it? It's like the strongest tradition that people take with them, at least the people we've interviewed, to other countries. So it speaks of how strong is for us, for whatever reason, you know, people keep doing it. And I think like it's just simply having that day. Obviously we remember the people who passed that we loved, but having a day to actually dedicate, no, and well, there's one day, but you put your altar de muertos and you leave it for a week or so, you know, and it's like a week of remembering not only them but what they used to eat, and put things for them. And it's just this connection with
and
the
it's
dead
also is, I mean, I don't know how many people realize this outside the Mexican culture, but it is a celebration. We don't put the altar as a like we're not crying or being sad about it. We're more about like, oh, what did he like? What did he enjoy? What did he drink? Like it's just a nice, happy tradition.
It's not a depressive thing.
It's not depressing.
It might be,
it's not.
It might be emotional, but not depressive. Exactly.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think I've said this before in another episode, I'm not sure, but like one time I wanted to do that in my previous job in England, and I was like, would it be cool if I do it? And then she was like, I think the mom of one of the owners died, and I was like, maybe it'd be nice. And then she said something like, I don't know, maybe a bit morbid, like, and I was like, oh, that's when I was like, of course you don't know, you don't see it the way I see it. For me, it's not morbid at all. It's the opposite. But that's when I was like, oh, okay,
So so then moving to Mexico, it was a new way of discovering or rediscovering the side of you of where it came from, right? Like there were things that you knew who you were, but then you didn't know where it came from. So just going back to Mexico to reintroduce all of this, and it just made sense, right? Is that what you were trying to say?
I always used to imagine like, well, what if my grandfather didn't die and my family had stayed in Florencia? Like who would I have been, right? So when I go and I see the life there, I see the people there, I can be like, oh, I would have been like this guy, right? You know, I would have had my little shop or whatever, or maybe I would work on the farm. And it makes me realize like happiness is not in the attainment of wealth. Happiness is the lifestyle that you have. It's the friends in your life. It's the food that you're eating. Are you able to do things that are fulfilling? Like most people, like I live in Japan right now, and it's like the third largest economy in the world, but most people just work, they live to work. Their whole life is just spent pursuing like that getting enough money so you can travel to Hawaii, getting enough money so you can go to Disneyland. It's like this rewards-based system. Whereas I think what I've learned from Mexican culture is like to not really worship authority. Like I don't care about my employer because they don't care about me at the end of the day. Like I'm always trying to, I work to live, right? So I have my job, I'm trying to survive, but really like my enjoyment of life, the time that I spend with my family is much more important than the dedication that I have to my job.
Nicely put. Okay.
And now I'm just so curious now about to hear your experience in Morocco, and even maybe that, especially how you were saying that you found those similarities, like a new thing but familiar, because you found these similarities with Mexican culture. So apart from
the language,
and apart from here, obviously your experience there and things you told me when we met in Germany after that trip. Oh, sorry, after you were not trip because you were living there, but after living there. Also it would be so interesting to see that if you found more similarities in the culture living there or anything that you have to say.
So in Mexico you can talk to like anyone. You can just say, hey, how do you get here, or what are you doing? And most people will give you their time, right? They'll give you like a moment, and they treat you like with humanity, right? They don't worry as much about their schedule. And this is the same in Morocco. So the second day I got there, I don't know where anything is in the town. So to give you, I guess, some background information, I got hired at like one of the most prestigious universities in Morocco. It's an all English university, so it's like an American university, but that's a very loose term. And it's not in a typical Moroccan city. It's in Ifran, and Ifran is up in the Atlas Mountains. It's one of the few places that snows in Morocco. It's like a tourist destination. There's a lot of fancy hotels. A lot of people go there to see the snow, which is not something that's common in Morocco. And so I lived in like this kind of bubble, because I'm seeing like the 1% of Morocco, like all of the richest people, the kings and the queens send their children there. The most wealthy business people send their children there. So and my students would tell me this all the time. My experience does not represent typical Morocco. I saw like the most educated, most open-minded, most exposed to other ideas. And that was evident whenever I would leave the town. But the similarities were people are very, like, I guess, not time oriented. So, for example, they don't follow the schedule exactly, right? So meetings start typically 15, 20 minutes after, I mean, like today's meeting, I
Like
guess.
today.
Right? And
so
my
Joey was
God.
expecting this. It's like, yeah, we're starting like, is there Mexican?
Mexicans.
well, because that's a part of the culture, right? That's a part of Mexican culture, is like time is not measured in minutes and hours. Time is measured in events. So like in America, even more so in Japan, I'm pretty sure in Germany too, like the clock is what dictates people's lives. That's more important. In Morocco, it's impossible to get to class on time. Like as a teacher, it's impossible, because as I'm walking from my office to my classroom, I'm gonna see people that I know, and I have to, like, it's a part of the culture. I have to stop and give them time. Like, it's very rude if you just say, "Hey, what's up?" and you keep walking. Like, the cultural expectation is you first of all have to greet them in 3 or 4 languages, right? So they speak French, Arabic, English, and then they have their own native languages. So you have to sing this song to them where you like repeat it, say, what is it? Labas,
Hello.
kulshi bikhair, sava, how are you? And you do that like 3 or 4, like it takes like a minute to greet someone, right?
That's funny.
Then you're gonna ask them, oh, well, how is your family? Like that whole just passing someone can take 5 minutes. And you might do that 3 times just in a short walk. Like a walk that would take 5 minutes, it's going to take you 20 minutes because of all the people. And that's understood. And that's why things don't start on time over there, because people value more the experience, the interaction, than the schedule, than the system.
Right.
And that was something that was frustrating coming from American culture to Mexican culture. It's like, okay, time is less important, but that's taken to like another degree in Morocco, right? So you go from like an American culture being very organized, very strict, to like less so, then to even less so. And it's like, even in like the HR department and the administration, like they start at 9, but you can't find anyone until 10 because they're always in a meeting, right?
Right. That's
And
interesting. I didn't think there was another culture that would be worse than the Mexicans for time.
well, I don't give it that value of better and worse.
Yeah, of
It's
course.
like, it's just like they value people
More than
more
the
than
time.
the systems, right?
Yeah.
And coming to Japan, where it's like the opposite, right? Like time is more important, your job is more important. It's very like shocking, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
that was one thing that I really liked about Morocco was like people were so much more willing to like, I guess, make the moment special, right? To have a party, to stay up late, to have a long conversation, to try and get to know you. Because Morocco's like a big crossroads. It's where, you know, the Middle East, Africa, and Europe come together.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you can see Spain from Morocco. You can just look across
Mm-hmm.
the ocean and see it. There's so many influences. They all speak like 3 or 4 languages. They just naturally are curious about other cultures. That you have to be in Morocco. Like, so going there, it was like kind of satisfying, but also kind of they have a culture based around being fake. I don't, I'm not trying to say this in a negative way, but a lot of people told me like, hey, you're too honest. You need to protect yourself more. And I actually did have a lot of problems with making like frenemies. You know what a frenemy is? Like someone who acts like they're your friend, but they're really
Yep.
your enemy.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Because people there are so like, at least and again, I don't mean this is all of Morocco, but at the campus I was at, are so toxic. They're just so unhappy. And they really don't have anything better to do than to think of ways to like manipulate people, bother them, betray them. I had a lot of students complain about like the environment. And
I'm
it
sorry, I
took
have to
me like,
say
yeah,
super quickly, this sounds like Florencia Venenosa for a minute.
Instead of a
Continue.
small town, it was the university.
Yeah, no, sorry, continue. I had to say it, Joey. I had to.
it's actually very similar because it's such a small, isolated community up in the
Mm-hmm.
mountains where there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing to do. So when you don't have anything positive to do, you're going to do negative things. And I went there like trying to with the expectation like, oh, this is a Muslim country, so I'm probably not going to drink for the whole year. I've never drank more in my life than when I was in Morocco. Like a big part of the culture is the face that you show to the public and then your private face, right? So everyone, because of the laws and it's a kingdom and that kingdom's based in the religion, everyone must appear to be like a very moral kind of person. But a lot of people, not everyone, a lot of people also want to enjoy life and have fun. And, you know, like, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Morocco is like the leading exporter of hash in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But it's illegal there. But it's been a part of their culture for thousands of years. And so like there's this weird like dichotomy between like the law saying this is illegal, you shouldn't do it. But some people like their grandfather grew it as, like that's how they lived. That was their survival, right?
Mm.
And so it is a very like a land that's very complex and full of contradictions and constantly changing, and you cannot have a plan. This is one thing I learned, like you can't plan things in Morocco because things are so fluid, there's so many variables. you're going to have to change your plan. So there were so many times where I would be like, okay, what are we going to do? And my friends would be like, we'll figure it out. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, they have they have just developed this skill of adapting quickly to new situations. And that's something that I really learned from living there.
I feel like I feel like there's a lot of, not a lot, but in Mexico there's this type of people sometimes in some places as well. There's this being able to just figure it out later, not worrying about, you know. Yeah, like a few things that you said, I was like, it sounds obviously, like you said earlier, it sounds like it's even more like to another level, but it's interesting to see. Sorry, Viana, you were gonna say something.
No, that it's just, I mean, like, that's why I love learning about different cultures, of how we were talking to somebody from Switzerland, and how the time is so important and there's no room for being spontaneous, right? And then you're in the other side of the world where there's no such thing as a plan and everything is spontaneous.
And like even planning is pointless because it's like it's gonna change. Whereas like in Switzerland, there was last episode, she was like, they can't, this stress of like we're not following the plan to the detail.
Yeah.
Even like one thing is not happening, then it ruins, you know, domino effect to the rest of the plan. Whereas like for us, for me as a Mexican, I'm like the best, you know, days or night outs or trips are the ones that I didn't plan, you know, to me, in my experience. So I'm not scared of not having a plan.
This goes back. I can't remember the name of the person we interviewed, but she was explaining how we see time. Like, as Mexicans, we see time as circular, while Germans people see it linear. So when something doesn't work at the beginning, it just breaks everything else. And for us, it's like, oh, it didn't work, but it's okay, we will catch up because we just go around. So
I can't remember that detail. It's so good that you remember. It was the episode of Las Conchas. It's called Siéntate, ahorita traemos unas conchas. And and it was her, well, I'll check her name again. I forgot. But yeah, that's interesting. I didn't remember that about the circle and the even like that. And Joey, but maybe this is a question for later, but I don't want to forget. So because you're gonna tell us more of Morocco or whatever you want to talk about, but we were talking again last episode with this Mexican girl who was talking about her experience in Switzerland, how the first thing that she was like shocked was by the precise minute where she didn't arrive to the bus stop. I think she arrived 2 minutes late. And then she was like, why the bus already left at 7:53 or whatever. And she was so like shocked by the punctuality. But then she then appreciated it and kind of changed to a kind of like, you kind of like become that, or I think she was adapt, and then you kind of appreciate it and you understand why that is, and it makes sense. So you kind of become a little bit like that. But I want to, like, at some point in this interview, I want to talk about how were you when you were in Morocco. You had to obviously adapt and be more fluid like them, but then you moved to Japan, which is like, and you've been there for quite a few months. So I would like to know how it is. How has that been for you, in terms of changes in yourself that you can notice? I mean, we can talk about this later, but I don't want to forget because I keep forgetting my questions.
Well, we can go into more detail. I anticipated a lot of these changes, and when I first got here, I tried too hard. It's so important that you are yourself wherever you go. Like, hello?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we lost you, but then we're back.
Yeah. Okay. So it was so hard to what?
You said that you tried really hard, and then we lost you for a little bit.
Yeah, I tried really hard, but then I realized I should just be myself wherever I go. Like, it doesn't matter what culture I'm in. Adapting to this culture versus Moroccan culture, to be honest, people are the same wherever you go. They have different tendencies, different foods, but like the differences normally are just very superficial. And so like I came in here with a lot of like stereotypes, like, okay, Japanese people are this way, they're that way, but not really. Like there are differences, but not as big as you might think. And we can talk more about that later.
Yeah, please.
And so, well, I kind of wanted you to tell us a story with, I don't know if you want to remember that, but of your flight and how you couldn't, like this, just to give a perspective, or just, yeah, of Morocco, and how the struggle to, you wanted to get your money, and this idea that they don't transfer the money. You remember that you were telling me, and that's how we end up. So I saw Joey last summer, actually, in Germany, and it was by chance. I was there visiting my sister, and he had a whole, again, I don't know if you want to recap those days, because I know they were hell for you, but it was so interesting because I could not believe that, those things happen, or or maybe that it doesn't happen, that it doesn't work as it works to me in the other places I've lived.
So this story is long. I just want to prepare you. And it will really kind of highlight the, I guess, the shortcomings of the Moroccan infrastructure, like the systems. I don't want to come on here and just say only bad things about Morocco. Like, I really, before I get into the story, just want to make it clear, like, some of my best friends are Moroccan, some of the best people I've ever met. It's just a really difficult situation. Like the country itself, there's just so much corruption that there isn't the same investment in terms of the people and the economy. There's a lot of exploitation from France. Like it's a former French colony. Still, most of the industries are French owned. So a lot of the wealth that is produced in Morocco goes to France. So I don't want to come on here and just make Morocco seem like a bad place. Like, I understand why things don't work. It's not really the faults of the people, I would say.
Right.
So
yeah.
That being said, welcome to my nightmare. So so I lived in the mountains, and I was leaving, and I knew I was just gonna leave Morocco. So I wanted to spend 3 weeks in my favorite city, Tangier, which is in the north. It's a beach city. I have a lot of friends that live there. I just wanted to like relax, unwind, and really just go out on a high note. That was my goal, right? And from there, I was going to go to the US. I had thought about going to Germany, but I was like, oh, it's too much, right? So as I'm leaving, I lose my Moroccan debit card, right? And this is where all of my money, I get paid from my school to this bank account. I go to Tangier, and I thought I lost my American bank card, my debit card. So I reported it lost. They canceled it. I found it in my wallet like the next day. Like, so I couldn't use that. So I just had like my credit card, and I thought to myself, like, oh, I would just go to my bank, the branch here in Tangier, and pull out money in person, like I do in the US. You just show them your ID. It's not a problem. The bank system works differently. They don't have like relationships between one branch to the other. It's very complicated to have money come from, Ifran, where I was living, to Tangier. So the guy shows me how I can download this app, which is all in French, and I don't know that much French, right? How I can download this app and send myself money through the app to the ATM, right? So it's like I can just, with some codes and stuff, like I can still get cash, because you need cash in Morocco because cards aren't as much of a thing there.
Right.
So I spend my 3 weeks there. It's great. I have a wonderful time, and it's time for me to go. So I asked my friend, like, well, how much is it to take a grand taxi? Because the taxi system's also different. They have the grand taxi, which can take you to different cities. The regular taxis can only operate in the city that they're in. I tried to take public transportation like the train, but I had so much luggage because I had been living there. Like, it was just impossible to carry it to the train, to find places on the train to store my luggage. So I was like, let me take a grand taxi. And he said it should cost you about 1,000 dirham, which is like their money. And I'm like, okay, good. So I go and I try to find a grand taxi. And the first guy I meet says, oh no, it's going to cost you 2,500 dirham. And I'm like, whoa, that's like more than double what my Moroccan friend told me it should be. I say, okay, thank you. And I go and I ask a few more people. And finally, I find someone who says 2,000. And I'm like, okay, I'll settle on this one. As I'm driving, the first guy calls the guy that I'm with and tells him to raise the price on me because of the distance. The gas prices just went up. During this time, like, the price of everything in Morocco went up. This was like peak inflation time, right? And I'm just like so tired of it. I'm like, okay, whatever. So it is like 40 degrees and the guy refuses to turn on the air conditioner because he believes it will save him money, right? But I think that's been proven wrong. It's actually more efficient to have. But anyways, so for like 3 hours, we're just driving in this hot car, right? Just like getting roasted. I didn't eat breakfast. I didn't drink anything. I just wanted to get to my hotel next to the airport, spend the night, get up, leave. That was the plan. The directions in the email that I was sent, because I entered it just straight from the email that the hotel sent me to my GPS, took us to another hotel, same name, in downtown Casablanca.
Oh no.
So we drove around there for like 30 minutes. We got lost. I had to ask someone where to go. They told us. It took like another hour to get to the airport. And the guy is like really upset with me because he hasn't eaten. He's driven, he normally drives like 1 hour, 2 hours. He's had to drive like 4 hours at this point, maybe 5, right? So I'm like, okay. I'm gonna give him extra money, but I don't have that much money on me. I don't have that much cash. I tell him I need to find an ATM, but from my bank, because they don't have that same, like, you can just go to any ATM.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, okay. We asked the hotel, where's the nearest ATM for my bank? And he says, it's 30 minutes that way. I'm like, okay.
Oh gosh.
We start driving into the middle of nowhere. And like, I'm not kidding. There were no cars. It was like people riding horses and stuff, like carts. And I'm just like, where? I have no idea where I am. And I'm like looking at my cell phone and there's like no reception. And I'm like, oh, I need internet in order to send myself money to the ATM, right? So we get to the town. Eventually we find the ATM and I still don't have internet.
Oh no.
And I'm just like, how am I gonna pay this guy? It's been like a whole day. At this point, it's like 7 p.m. We left at like 11 a.m.
Oh my gosh.
How am I gonna pay this guy? And I'm just like praying, like, please give me just 1 bar of signal, right? It goes through, like, finally I'm able to do it. And I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, I want to keep all my money in the bank. I'll just transfer it when I get to the US. So I'm just going to take out enough money to pay him to have a nice dinner tonight because I'm really hungry at this point. And I'm going to go. I don't need that much cash. Big mistake. This is like the biggest mistake of my life.
No.
So we go we go back to the hotel. I take a shower, eat. I remember tipping the guy the last of my money. I was like, yeah, here, have this really big tip, the waiter, because I'm like, I'm leaving tomorrow. I don't need this. I get up early. I'm at the airport 3 hours early, and I have all of my luggage, right? I have a big suitcase, a small suitcase, 2 guitars, golf clubs, a backpack, and I'm dressed in a suit because I'm like, I'm gonna see my family again. I haven't seen them in a year. I want to make like a good impression, right? So I get to the ticket counter and they're like, okay, you have all this extra bags. It's going to be like 2,000 dirham. And I'm like, no problem. Here's my credit card, the one that I bought the ticket with.
Yeah.
It doesn't work in their machine, right? It just doesn't work. And I'm like, oh, can you try it again? He's like, do you have another card? And I'm like, no. He's like, okay, well, you need cash. And I'm like, okay, is there an ATM here in the airport? And there's an ATM for every bank in Morocco except mine.
Oh.
Except mine.
Oh.
And my bank is a 30-minute drive
To that
from
town?
the airport. Yes.
Oh gosh.
I don't have cash to take a taxi. I don't have anything. So I realized like I'm gonna miss my flight because even if I can get a taxi, like there's just not enough time to go and come back. So I tried to book a flight the next day. It's gonna cost me $1,200 more. But then I get this weird message. They call me and they're like, oh, sometimes it takes a few hours for the transaction to process. So call us back in a few hours to check to see if everything's gone through. And I'm like, okay, no problem. So I go to a taxi driver who doesn't speak English. I have to talk to him in my limited Arabic. And the Arabic that I know is different than Moroccan Arabic, like very different. So I'm trying to explain to him, like, I don't have money, but I can go get money if you take me to this specific bank. And he's like, yeah, sure, no problem. So we go to the bank and I'm like, okay, I need to take out all of my money because this is going to be too complicated for me to like try to do this from the US. So I go inside the bank and it's still 40 degrees. I'm wearing a suit and I'm waiting for like 2 hours to just see the bank teller, to just talk to him. Because they're like talking to their friends, like having a great time. And it's a huge problem for me to take out my money because it's not the branch that I have my account in.
Right.
They have to call to Ifran, get some verification. It takes the whole day. The whole day I'm waiting there in the heat, like just sweating. The taxi driver can't leave. He has to stay with me because he needs to get paid.
Right.
And just by coincidence, one of my friends was doing an internship in this town. So eventually he comes, he's Moroccan, right? So he can talk to people for me. He comes, we hang out, and finally I get all of my cash. It was like $10,000 in cash. Like I feel like a drug dealer or something. Like I'm just carrying this satchel full of money, right? And I'm just
Oh my gosh.
make sure nobody steals it from me, right? The guy originally, like the taxi driver, originally wanted like $40 for the whole day, right? And I'm like, okay, he's been with me too much, so I give him like $100, which is way more than he would have made, right? And as he's dropping me off, he asked me for more money. And I was just like, what? what did you say? I was like really going to kill him, like in that moment. Like, I'm like, and he's like, oh no, forget it, forget it. So I get back to the hotel. I call the airline to make sure that my flight has gone through like they told me to.
Yeah.
The lady says, oh, sorry, all the flights have been booked. You have to book one for the next day. It's
Oh,
going to cost you $3,500. And
what?
I was like, and so I go online and I'm looking for flights, and all of the flights from Morocco to the US are like $3,000. And they're all like 30-hour flights. And I'm just like, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? Like, I I decide, like, look, maybe it will be cheaper to fly from another airport, right? And so I'm like, oh, okay, Monse lives in Germany. Maybe I'll go to Germany. It was the same price for me to go to Germany, fly there, stay in a hotel for a week, and fly to the US as it would be to fly the next day.
Oh
So
my.
this is my emergency vacation that I took, right? Like I
Yeah.
didn't I didn't want to. It wasn't a part of my plan, but I was like, okay, if I have to spend the money, at least I want to get something out of it, right? Like enjoy it.
Yeah.
So the next day, same thing. I'm there 3 hours early, except this time my flight's on Air France. I had to go to a different airline. I get to the front and I have my satchel just full of cash. And I'm like, haha, cash? I'm gonna pay in cash. And they're like, oh, sorry, we
Mhm.
don't accept cash. And I'm like, oh
Are
my
you?
God. Like I'm like
I know.
You had
I'm
taken all
standing
the.
there.
Oh my God, I can't. I
And
can't.
so the most intense moment of my life, I'm like, okay, let's try my credit card one more time. And it's just like slow motion. I'm just like pulling it out. I'm like looking at it, giving it to them. And like you know how it takes like 30 seconds for it to read.
Yeah.
That felt like a year. Like just a year. I was just sitting there like in my head, I'm like, I'm never gonna leave. Like I'm gonna have to stay, like I'm gonna be here forever. Like,
Oh my
and they're
gosh.
like, okay, it went through, and I'm like,
Oh my goodness.
but that's not the end of the story. We're like
What?
halfway. We're like halfway through the
Oh
story.
my. Okay.
I'm not gonna tell you the whole thing, but I'll just tell you up until Germany. So I have to go because I have like large packages, right? I have my guitar with me. So I have to go to like special place to load the luggage, right? And there's like this big argument, like the guy comes out from behind the luggage department, yells at the guy with me, like, you can't do this. And I'm just like, oh my God, I can't send my guitars. Like eventually they figure it out. I get to France because that's where my layover is in Paris. And I'm like, I need to change my money because I'm not gonna have my cards aren't working.
Right.
I don't have any cash, right? I just have Moroccan money and I can't buy anything in Germany with it. So I go to the exchange, and when I'm exchanging dirham to euro, I miss my connecting flight to Germany. So I have to stay the night and catch like a 7 a.m. flight. Uh, None of the restaurants are open. So I basically just go to the hotel, lay down for 30 minutes, wake up, and go catch my flight. When I get to Munich, I'm like in the baggage claim and I'm like, where's my baggage? And I'm like looking around and the guy's like, sorry, if it was here, it would be here. You should fill out this form. And I'm just like, oh my God, like they lost my bags. And so that was up until Germany. there's still more to that story, but that was how hard it was to leave Morocco.
Oh my goodness. Did you eventually get the suitcases? That's the only. Okay, good.
I think he got everything, but he was like, my golf clubs.
That is crazy. Oh my God. Like, oh, I feel sorry for you. I'm sorry you had to experience that.
I
But
know.
are
But
there any
then-
lessons that you learned?
I just want to say he probably had many lessons. But then in Germany we met, which was a coincidence, and it was great. And then one day, my sister was busy, and we met, and it was hot in Germany that week and that day specifically. And Joey found this amazing water park near Munich, and he's like, I think we should go there. And I'm like, oh my God, I love water parks. Like, there's nothing I love more in the world than water parks. And we went, and it was amazing. Amazing. Now you
But
can
by
talk about
water parks,
your
you mean
learning.
like they just like little fountains that kids play, or what do you mean by water
No,
park?
how would you call it, Joey? I don't know. Slides.
They have
Like slides?
slides,
Oh, cool. Okay.
a wave
Like an
Badass.
actual,
pool.
yeah. Cool.
Oh,
Nice.
I recommend big time. We went like, I was like, ah! Like, it was just the best. It was just the best thing ever. It's great. I can't remember the name, but it's just outside. It's the biggest water park in Europe, I think, isn't it, Joey?
Yeah,
It's
I think it's
incredible.
in
Cool.
Erding. I think it's in
Erding,
Erding.
yeah, that's where it's been from. Yeah, in Erding. It's very close to Munich. Like, we just took the S-Bahn, well, the metro, which takes you everywhere in Germany that you want to go, and it takes you there, and it was amazing. But yeah, no, I'm sure, Joy, you had lots of learning lessons while you were in Morocco.
Yeah, well, I just
about
want to
many
know.
things.
Yeah, like I said, overall, like, what are the big things that you take about Morocco with you? Like, they make you happy that you're like, oh yeah, I really love this period of my life living here because what?
Well, number one is the people that I met. So I made some really great friends. We have so many great memories together. I really miss them, and I actually want to go back to see them. Like, even after all of the difficulties, I still, like, it was a tough situation, but once we became friends, it was like a really nice thing. And the food is pretty good. Like, I don't like everything, but the things that I tried were like pretty good. Just the experience of, like, even that bad moment, right? So when I got to Germany, it felt so good. It felt so good because I had bacon for the first time in a year. Like, that was the first thing that I ate was bacon. I just ate like a pound of bacon, a kilo of bacon. So it
So nice.
made me appreciate life, but it also kind of taught me, like, life is very difficult. So I shouldn't look for just the easy way. I should look for things that are satisfying, because if I look for the easy way, it's still going to be hard. At some point, the easy way becomes hard, but there's not the reward at the end.
Mm-hmm.
If I focus on what's satisfying after all of the problems, then at the very least, I have that reward for all of the trouble that I went through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's
It's like going for like camping. I feel like you hate it in the moment, and then you go back to your bed and you're like, oh, this is so comfy. When maybe other nights you're like, oh, my bed is the worst. Viana, you were gonna say there is a saying of,
well, I don't know if it's a saying or something, but it's like, choose your heart. Like, everything is hard, but it's just, there are different kinds of heart.
Yeah.
And then,
yeah, no, that's really good. And I mean, we've taken your time so long because it is so interesting everything you're telling us, but just a little bit of Japan. Like, I thought you were living in Tokyo for some reason. I don't know, I had in my mind that you were there, but I hear now you're in Nagoya, and that's, or near Nagoya, isn't it? Did you say that?
Yeah, maybe like 20 minutes from Nagoya.
are you teaching there?
Kind of. I'm teaching at an Aikawa, which is like an English school.
Okay.
So it's not as good of a job as teaching at university. But I did that just because Japan has been closed, like completely closed for the past few years. And a lot of the university jobs that I'm looking at here require you to already be living in Japan. So it's like, I figured I'll take this job to get here, see if I like it, and then start looking for other jobs. And that's where I'm at. Like, Japan as a country is great. Japanese people are wonderful. My job sucks. So it's like I am trying to move to Tokyo because in Japan, like everything emanates from Tokyo. It's like the heart and center in terms of economy, in terms of education, in terms of culture. So living here in like the industrial capital, where it's like a lot of like Toyota, I live near where Toyota is. It's just more business oriented, more routine. People are just kind of like about going to work. It's a good place to raise a family. Very nice, quiet, safe, but it's kind of boring. I want to say a little boring. But yeah, moving to a new country is hard regardless. Japan is a very isolated country. So Morocco is like a crossroads that has constantly been exposed to new cultures. Not the case in Japan. The demographics, it's like 95% Japanese people. So there just aren't a lot of foreigners here. So their understanding of different cultures there is not as developed. They're also not social. So Moroccan people can pick up languages very quickly because they have high level social skills because their culture revolves around constantly meeting people. You can see in like how restaurants are designed here. Like, for example, a bar in America, at least, a bar is designed to be like open. You go there, you can go by yourself and make friends. Here, it's like a very like isolated thing. Like you just go with your friends, you sit at your table, and you have your experience. But the idea that you're just going to talk to a stranger is not very common here.
Interesting.
Wow.
Is there a reason?
Opposite.
Is there a reason why you chose to go to Japan?
I'm an English teacher, and so I have to go to like where the demand is for English teaching. Okay. Japan really prioritizes English teaching, like it's an important part of their educational system.
Okay.
And Japanese people know a lot of English, but they have really struggled to use it. And so I have this idea to create like a language bar where it's like a bar. You just have some drinks, but you learn English and you can meet people, you can talk to people. And I just wanted to see if this was the place to do that because they kind of have this openness to unique style restaurants, like they have like the Cat Cafe, you know, like they're looking for these kind of innovative experiences. So I thought, hey, if there is a place, Japan's probably that place where I can do that. But yeah, it's anytime you move, I'm sure when you were 15 moving to Vancouver, like you experienced the culture shock, you experienced the loneliness of not knowing anyone.
Yeah.
So this is like the hard part. And if I can get through this, there's a reward. You know, it's gonna I can definitely say with the right job, I can have a very good life here.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
I'm sure you will find it. And do you see yourself in the long term in Japan, or do you have like still this thing of going to a new place? Is it too soon?
It's too soon.
It's too soon. He just got there.
This is something I ask myself every day is like, what's more important? Is it more important for me to fulfill my dream of seeing the world? Or do I want to have roots? Do I want to have friends for more than a year? Do I want to belong somewhere? Do I want to see my family? Because if I live in Japan, my brother, my father, my mother, they're all going to become old, and I'm not going to be there to experience that. We're only going to see each other once a year. And so I have to ask myself very seriously, like, what's more important? And that's just such a hard question.
Yeah. True. But I mean, it's like, yeah. And right now you just got there a few months ago, and like you might not even need to get to that question. Maybe something else will come and make you decide to go back, and you'll answer that question later on. Like sometimes there's not even point trying to, because it's so hard, as you say, and things can change. So yeah, but it's really cool that you've experienced different cultures in different countries, and you come from two as well. And I think that obviously I imagine that helps you to be more adaptable, like the fact that you went to Mexico and learn so much about you and understand your background and where you come from, or part of you, and how well you adapted to Mexico when you were there, because that's when we met. And I remember you were like a natural. You were like a Mexican immediately. Like, well, I think I met you when you were there for the first time. Is it when we met, or we met the second time? And like
The second time, yeah.
It didn't seem like you didn't. I thought you, when you said earlier that the first time you went to Mexico was when you were in your 20s. I didn't know that. I thought you used to go for holidays, because it didn't seem like you were new. So it's really cool. I think it's really, really interesting. And we usually ask some questions at the end to our
Well, I
oh my God,
still have questions.
Please go for it. Go for it.
No,
I'm here
just like, yeah, I mean, like, yeah, maybe the questions don't apply for you, but I will say, like, there's one question that I always get when moving to a new place, and I'm very curious to know what you will answer to this. But it's like, if somebody comes to you and it's like, where are you from? Like, is your instinct to say right away, like, I'm American, or do you always have to bring up the fact that you're Mexican as well?
I tell everyone that my dad is from Mexico. Like, that's your first, I'm going to say I'm from the US, so that they understand me a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I am very proud to be Mexican. And I stopped saying my name is Korea. I am Correa. And if you can't say my name, then that's your problem, right?
Yes.
Right.
Maybe.
But I think because a lot of people have such a negative image of what Mexicans are, that I want to prove them wrong. And I want to say we're way more diverse, way more interesting than what is portrayed in the media, like,
right.
But it's also like a way of reminding myself of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I think so many people get caught up in trying to adapt that they lose their connection to the past.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the only one of my American cousins who speak Spanish. I'm the only one who's been to Mexico. They all pretend to be 100% American. They're like embarrassed to be Mexican.
Interesting.
But they don't know, because their parents never took them.
Right.
Never showed them what it's like. Like, I have so many fun memories of going to the Posada with Pili and Monse,
Mm-hmm.
going to see my Aunt Coco, my Aunt Virginia, trying a pajarete for the first time. Like, there's so many like really good things that I want to keep with me. And so I have a question for you two. Do you miss Mexico? And do you ever imagine yourself living there again?
Do you want to go first?
We always ask. It's so funny. Like, we always are the ones asking, "Oh, would you go back?" And then we just, hide behind the microphone. Like, I miss Mexico. It's strange. You see, I feel like I adapt very well as as much like I was saying about you that I can. This is my perception. I feel like I adapt very well to new places, and I can say this more confidently or confident. I cannot speak
yeah.
confidently now that I moved to Ireland, to Cork, after living 7 years in Bristol, in a place I love and I loved while I was there. Like, it was like the place to me. I was like, this is a place, my place in the world. I'm gonna live here forever. I'm gonna, I thought at that time. Then I moved here, and it was hard at the beginning, and now. So, if I think of, do I miss Bristol? And this is me trying to justify why my straight answer would be like, I don't miss Mexico. But I think it's not that I don't miss these places, it's that I'm just so happy here because it's new and I'm learning so many things and I'm meeting so many people, and I'm also meeting so many Mexicans, and we do a lot of Mexican things that I couldn't do in Bristol because I didn't know that many Mexicans. That my first answer would be like, I don't, but I think I do. And it's just that I'm so well adapted that I think I don't miss Mexico. And when I go, and we talked about this, the previous episode, about the reverse shock, cultural shock.
Culture shock,
yeah. And I had that the first days, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so chaotic and noisy and contamination. But then after a few days, I'm like, oh, I love it here. I love this, how fluid it is, and all the good things, that differences from here. I think my biggest issue is how unsafe can be. And, growing up in Mexico, I was always worried. You're walking on the street, and if you feel someone walking behind you, especially as a woman, as a girl, like growing up, it's like you're worried and you're tense. And if you go to your car, especially in the evening, you have to look that no one is hiding, and things my mom would have teach me, like, oh, walk in the middle of the street if it's a quiet street, because someone can jump at you from the hiding in a tree or something. So I don't miss that. And I think having a life where I don't have to worry about those things so much, it's so nice that it makes me like, it makes it easier for me not going back. Like, it's like, well, I would love to, but it's so unsafe, and I feel so tense and stressed all the time. And I mean, you both know my mom, what happened, and those things, I used to live so scared after that for so many years, until I moved to Europe, and I lived this peaceful life. You have to be careful here.
Security.
And things happen here as well. I'm not saying this is Japan, because I know Japan is great for, like, criminal, and like, it's way safer, but it is another level. So I think that's the reason why, and this is to answer the second question, I don't see myself going back. Maybe when I'm older, but because I want to start a family, I find it easier for me to have a child here, that one, I'm not going to be that worried about something happening to the child. And I feel like I didn't have so much liberty or freedom to go out and do things, because it was dangerous. So people tend to be more overprotective to the children, because it's more dangerous. So for those reasons, I don't see myself going back soon, in the next years. I don't know, 10, 20 years, but maybe older, as a grandmother in the ranch. That I see. I think so.
That's nice. Well, that was a long answer.
I know, I'm sorry, I had to. So sorry.
No, but I was just trying to think, because I also have a long answer, because it's complicated. It's a complicated question in the regards, like, I mean, you're half Mexican. I'm 100% Mexican. However, that I do have this internal struggle of not feeling 100% Mexican and not feeling 100% Canadian. I have spent most of my life here in Canada I have lived here in Canada longer than I have lived in Mexico. So there are many things that sometimes I just feel like, am I like this area I don't understand from the Mexican culture, this other area I don't understand from the Canadian culture. So it's hard. But at the same time, like I love my roots. I know I'm Mexican, and that's why I was saying sometimes it's hard to answer, because when they ask me like, hey, where are you from? And I'm like, well, I'm from Canada because my passport is Canadian. However, I'm Mexican because I was born in Mexico. So there's always that answer, right? Like, yeah, like I live in Canada, but I'm from Mexico, blah, blah, blah. And I love being Mexican because most of the time, the perception or people when they say like, oh, you're Mexican, I love Mexico. Like there's more to talk about saying that you're Mexican than saying you're Canadian. Because it's like, oh yeah, Canada, pretty, okay. But it's like Mexico. And then I love it when people start telling me all these things that I don't even know about Mexico. It's like, oh, I have traveled here and there and this and that. And it's like, yes, like Mexico has so much. And I love that. And I have a daughter. So I always tell my daughter, like, you're half Mexican. Like, this is an important part of you. And I don't want her to miss out on that. Like, as a difference, like, I want her to be proud of it and know the history of it. Therefore, we're going to Mexico for a few months with the intention of her learning Spanish. I mean, she understands it, but she doesn't speak it. So for me, it's important that she actually learns the language and experience it. Like I want her growing up knowing about our culture. However, I do not see it as a long term or like going back to live there, just of the same reasons that Pilar is mentioning, just the security, just knowing that my girl is safe where we're living. Like that's priority to me. So yeah.
Maybe
No,
maybe
I totally
maybe as grandmothers.
I totally understand what you're saying. It is dangerous. One time, me and my dad used to drive to Florencia from California. It's like a 2.75 day drive. One time, we were in Mexico. We had just crossed the border from New Mexico, and we were waiting at a toll. And the lady wouldn't let us through. And my dad's like, what's going on? And she's like, oh, we're being robbed right now. And I look, and there's like these trucks, and there's these guys getting out with machine guns, and they're like walking towards us.
Oh my gosh.
And my dad tells the lady, if you don't open this fucking gate right now, I'm gonna drive right through it, right? And she opens it, and we're just like, just 100 miles an hour, right? And then the federales start coming this way. So yeah, it is dangerous.
Yeah.
But I personally believe that things change. So I believe Mexico will have his day on top. Like, if every time I go, I didn't go last year, but I go most years, it's a little bit better. Things are a little bit more developed, a little bit safer. And the truth is, a lot of manufacturing is moving there right now. Like China, the cost of labor is going up and they're not as skilled. So like so many companies are moving their factories. So just like China saw this huge economic boom in like the last 20 years, I think Mexico will also experience this boom. So right now, I believe they're trying to crack down on like the cartels and stuff, and they're making like serious moves, but that's having big consequences. I think one day the dust will settle. I think that the economy will improve. I think it will become safer. And I'm not saying that I will, but I definitely could live there, especially in Guadalajara. Like Guadalajara is so beautiful. Like the weather is good. But I always say it's not where you live, it's how you live. So it's your job, your circle of friends, your lifestyle. Like,
Yeah.
is it possible for me to have that lifestyle in Mexico? Absolutely. Absolutely. But I just need to find it. You know what I mean? Like to find the right job, the right group of people.
Right.
So yeah, that's my piece on that.
So you might go back, Joy. No going back. You might move there one day. And it will always be there, like you said at the beginning. If things go wrong, which any minute we're
There's
waiting.
always Florence. No, that's the title. If things go wrong, there's always
Florencia. Yeah, there you go. So maybe we can ask you what's your favorite. So I was saying earlier that we ask a few questions at the end, and this is questions about, like, for example, if I go to Mexico, what do we bring in our bag? Well, we can ask you. I think there's some that it will suit. So if you go to Mexico, what is the first thing you eat or you would love to eat?
That's a hard question to answer. No, because it would be my grandma's food, but she's passed away. So
yeah.
But other than that,
okay, if she was, but what would be if she was alive? Like, what would you eat if she could cook you?
What would she make for you? Because she knew that you loved that.
she always would make gorditas del horno. So this is like,
this is a Florencia.
They make them on this, they make them on this leaf, and this leaf has like a flavor, and it's not a good I don't like it that much. But it's so unique it's just such a unique flavor that, like, I think that's what I would
experience, right? It's the roble, la hoja de roble, which is oak, I think, in English, and it's the leaf. There's lots of oak there, so the women collect the leaves, and then they make this kind of, like, it looks like a hot cake mix, but it's made with corn, I think. And so they pour it in the leaf and put it in a stone oven.
So, like,
and
kind of like tamales mixed with sopes, like,
but it's not, you see, it's just open. So they just pour it like a plate, but because they pour it inside the oven, and the whole thing with the oven, because it's like just stone, they have to heat it up. I've seen it once that they're like, getting into the right temperature, and they put some of the gorditas there, and then they burn too quickly, or and they're like, this is the because you can't control it, like, so they're like, now do it. So then they start pouring the gorditas because it's the right temperature, to keep it, in the right. It's a skill, because then you have to put more wood, and then it just goes higher or whatever. But and then you just stand around, and this is when you're eating them just freshly made, and you stand around and you're just waiting your turn, and then you get your thing, your leaf with your gordita on top. And it's funny because the leaf, I've never burned myself, so I don't know if they don't get too hot, or I don't know. But then you have to kind of peel the cake from the leaf, and that's where it grabs the flavor. So I don't know if the health and safety regulations will be, but no one has died, I don't think. But that's a very, very original one, Joey. I like it. Another question we ask is, if you go to Mexico, what would you bring back to where you live? Let's say you go to Mexico and then you're going back to Japan. What would you put in your bag?
In my bag, I normally don't buy souvenirs, so this is like a hard question.
Well, is there like a food, or you get a tequila, or is there something that you do bring for yourself? Chili?
There's no chili here, so let me just say, yes, I would bring like a suitcase full of dried chilies, fresh chilies. Like,
I knew it.
They have Tabasco sauce, and they even have like the very spicy one, so I can get like the hotness, but to have like a fresh salsa, or even like the salsa de molcajete, like,
you gotta make it.
Yeah, but he needs the chili, so so he needs to go to Mexico and get them. But Joey is great with like his level of, it's unbelievable. Like,
his level of what? His like, tolerance for
tolerance.
Okay.
Oh gosh, I have no words. He's another level. And I guess, well,
What Mexican song? Is there a Mexican song that reminds you of your roots?
There is. That doesn't. My favorite Mexican song is El Último Beso.
Mm.
it's a
And
great song.
I play that. I always request it. In America, I have a lot of Mexican friends, so I go to all these like parties, these Mexican parties, and they always have a DJ, and they always play like the dancing music, and I always request El Último Beso to ruin the party. Like, this is my favorite.
It's a great song. You have to look it up. Whoever doesn't know, you Vianney.
I don't know it.
You look it up with Vicente Fernandez. And
Okay, that's what I was going to say. Like with whom?
yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's the
Vicente
version you like,
Fernandez,
not
okay.
Joey, with Vicente.
Último
I don't know if it was his, if more people sing it, but I've heard that version with him. And then, do you practice a Mexican tradition in your life, as in, like, for example, Dia de los Muertos or Mexican Independence Day? Is there one
Or
that
anything, yeah. Something you know that only Mexicans do.
and that you would do as well, like a
That you
posada?
would do.
Nothing like very formal like that. I mentioned earlier, like, I always invite my friends over and I cook for them.
Yeah.
Like, this is so satisfying for me to eat with my friends, like, but not just to go out and eat, to have them in my home and to give them something that I made. Like, that's something I learned from my dad and my grandma. Like, whenever somebody, like an uncle, would come visit, it's like, come over, let's cook you something. And you enjoy that meal. I don't know, I really don't know how to describe it, but that's something I haven't seen so much in other cultures.
The classic mi casa es tu casa.
Yeah,
Like that kind of
yeah. And like, they fit you, like, and I've met Mexican women married to Irish guys here, and what they say is that it's like, oh my gosh, I ate so much because we were visiting all the uncles and they all fed me. And they were, you have to eat, and they know. I think there's similarities between Irish and Mexicans, and they know they can't say no because it's rude. So I guess a German would be like, no, thank you, like, I'm full, that's it. Whereas they know, and he was like, I was up to here, and then they kept offering tamales, and it's like, we need to see your family like one, different days, because
different days,
and I never understood this before until, well, now that Joe is mentioning it, that he hasn't seen it in other places, but also we've asked this question to other people, and a lot of the people we interview, they say the Day of the Dead, but another one that's been popular is food. And yeah, it's just interesting. I just hadn't noticed that that's just a Mexican thing, or maybe other places do, but not everywhere. So that's really interesting.
You know what's another of my Mexican costume or something? All my food, I have to have lime and jugo Maggi.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
everything.
The lime is
lime and jugo Maggi for everything. Like when my husband cooks and everything, like, and he sets the table, he knows like there has to be half a lime and jugo Maggi on the table.
Good. That's very
and
good.
Valentina, of course.
Yeah, because sometimes Barry cooks something and he puts a lot of effort in, and he's very good. But then if I add something, he, like Valentina or something, he just looks at me and I'm like,
it has not. Same thing.
It doesn't have like that. It needs to swim in something. I don't know. It needs to have some sort of liquid there. What's going on?
That's one thing I've noticed. Like, I dislike dry food. It has to be on some like
juicy.
Sauce.
There has to be some sort of.
If it's dry, I don't like it. And then my husband also cooks well. Like he does good. But one day I was like, oh, I need salt, and he's like, it has enough salt. I'm like, it has nothing to do about how you prepare it. Like, I know it tastes fine, I just need my salt with my lime and my jugo Maggi. Like, it has nothing to do with like
with the quality of your skills. It's just something we need. Yeah,
Yes.
that's what I need to explain. And you know, obviously I prefer to put like a salsa de molcajete, like Joey was saying, but when you don't have it, you just put Valentina or whatever is there, like Shirash, I can't say it.
Sriracha.
Sriracha. Anything, just give me spice. Yeah.
Sriracha.
And yeah, I think we always also ask this question, which is become more difficult. I don't know if we're gonna get rid of it, but you know this song about Mexico lindo y querido. You know that song, Joey, that says si moro lejos de ti. Uh-huh. And that's the name of our podcast, que digan que estoy dormido, because it says México lindo y querido, si moro lejos de ti, que digan que estoy dormido y que me traigan aquí. And so we asked this question, like, would you see yourself, or you know, if you died, would you like to go back, so being taken to Mexico? Or you know, some people have said half and half, some people have said I don't care what you do, I'm gonna be dead. Some people are like, no, I'm gonna stay. So is there a connection with Mexico that you have, that you would say, I'd like my cenizas, my ashes, to be spread in Florencia Venenosa?
In Florencia.
Or Guadalajara?
Not in Florencia. So there's, I to be honest, my version of Mexico is atypical. So like the people of Florencia and really like the surrounding rural communities are not like other parts of Mexico. They're like very unique.
Mm-hmm.
I feel the connection to the ranch, Huecon, like that is so deep within me. Like when I go there, I just feel like so much love for that place. Like if you know, I honestly don't care because I will be dead, right? But if there is a place where I will be buried or my ashes, you know, thrown, that would be the place, because it just has so much meaning to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's, do you say, you said the name of that ranch? Is that the ranch? So is that the ranch where I'm thinking? Or you mentioned, because you said a name, and I don't know if you mean another place. I just want, this is just me being curious now.
Have you been to Huecon?
I don't think so. That's why I was like, I don't recognize that name.
Maybe
so I have, and I just don't know the name. You know,
I don't know. I don't know that you have. I don't know that you have. That's interesting.
Maybe I have to go. A place I don't know in Florencia.
We have to plan like a summer trip to Florencia, because I really want to take you and Barry and Monse and Sven and maybe Biani and your family too, right? Like what we do during the summer is we all jump in the truck and we drive into, like, it's like deep into the mountains. Like you leave civilization. It's not that far. It's maybe like a 30-minute drive from Florencia, but like the nature is so unbelievably beautiful, and it's this mountain range, and there's like the ruins of their houses because they made their houses out of rocks. So you will see like little like squares of rocks, and my dad will be like, yeah, we all used to live here. We all slept on the floor in one room. We had candles. We used to bathe in this river, and like it's so amazing. Like really just a cool experience.
Wow.
So that's your place. That's amazing. My place is the ranch where my dad lives now. So yeah. And I feel also a very deep connection. And recently I found, and you were there in Germany when I was looking into the history, like my dad's family has been living there, and including, so Joey's grandmother is my aunt. She was my aunt. So she grew up there, and all of our family, like hundreds of years, they had the same view.
That's
yeah.
So
and
cool.
I just found out recently that, and I'm like, because there's this mountain, this particular like view, really beautiful. And I'm like, we have all looked at the same mountain, and it's really nice. And my last name is Miramontes, so it's just we've been looking at this mountain. So
she did a chef's kiss.
Yes. Oh yeah, for the ones who aren't looking. Joey, it was so nice to talk to you.
Yeah, it was so
held you
nice.
for 2 hours, right?
Oh my gosh, is it? Okay.
It's too interesting. Too interesting.
It's so interesting. Then I mean, there's more that we could talk about, because I mean, you're living. We heard a story about a Mexican living in Tokyo, so very interested to know about like your way of living where you are, but it will have to be
maybe
another time.
Yeah, further down when he's been living there longer. But
Yes.
yeah, that was a very interesting one as well. This girl who lives in Tokyo.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much for listening. And you and I say all the things that you say because I never know all the social media stuff.
Okay, but I'll say it in Spanish.
Yes.
Switch. Ok, te regreso en español. Pues muchas gracias por escucharnos. Espero que les gustó este episodio. Creo que aprendimos muchas cosas nuevas. Gracias, Joy. Y si nos quieren seguir, Instagram es @durmientesmx. En YouTube estamos como No, que digan que estoy dormido podcast. Pilar me hace cara de que no. Y
Me encanta que no sepamos nuestras redes, eso me encanta.
Es que somos...
O sea, yo lo amo.
Somos de lo peor.
Somos de lo mejor.
Es que no somos jóvenes.
No.
Bueno, ni más, ya no sé qué iba a decir. Mejor ya no la riego.
Creo que la gente, ya no importa, sí, ya, hay que dejarlo así. Ya dijimos, entonces, son esos dos los que tenemos
Sí. Y TikTok para Durmientes MX, como que ahí
Perfecto.
nada más pongo
Muy
el
bien.
preview
de los episodios.
del episodio, sí. No hacemos bailes, no se preocupen.
Social media no es nuestro fuerte, para nada, como pueden notar. Así que si nos quieren encontrar van a tener que hacer un esfuerzo.
No hacemos bailes y ni creo que llegaría a que Pili hiciera algo. Yo por tontería sí, pero Pilar nunca, jamás.
Si no empiezo el programa me da vergüenza, imagínate bailar en TikTok, válgame.
Bueno, muchas gracias, que tengan un buen día. Nos vemos el próximo episodio. Bye.